Welcome back to our latest session with The Doctor Will See You Now. Well, for this session, I would like to introduce you to an author that you might not have heard of, because this is an author with a debut novel, and also because it's a debut novel that comes from the other side of the world. And I think the way that crime fiction, joins us together globally is just one of the many exciting aspects of crime fiction. I had the wonderful good fortune to meet this author 2019 at Rotorua Noir, hosted by Craig Sisterton and Grant Nichol, a beautiful crime fiction festival in Rotorua in New Zealand. And it brought together an amazing group of crime writers and crime aficionados. Again, a global meeting in New Zealand. Now, sadly, as we all know, that kind of gathering is a little bit problematic, especially for certain parts of the globe. But here, thanks to Zoom, we can actually have those meetings. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Rae Cairns into the doctor's surgery. Welcome, Rae. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for having me, Jackie. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, things are good.
Yeah. I wish I were able to do this, and who knows, maybe one day, is to welcome you in person to Newcastle Noir.
How much would I
Yeah, because we have a big passion for Southern Cross crime, and with the help of Craig Sisterton, to bring authors over and enjoy meeting you. So who knows what the new world might bring, but if we can do that, please do come to Newcastle.
I would love.
So we are here to celebrate, shall we call it, the birth of this book? Yeah.
Yeah.
Published in December last year by Bandrui. Bandrui is the publisher. Yeah, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, brilliant. And thank you so much for sending over a copy when that novel came into being. And people all around the globe. Well, I know it's available from that naughty site of Amazon, but I know all good bookshops would get hold of a copy of this for you, and I recommend that you do get hold of a copy of this.
And as of last month, it's
Yeah.
available on audiobook as well. So
Yes.
yes.
Brilliant. I was just talking to a friend earlier today about how she is preferring now to listen to her crime novels, because she feels that they transport her better than reading the book. Being lost in the text. The listening it's that experience. But I would say to readers, take a deep breath before you dive in on this. Because or make sure you have got plenty of time, because you won't want to put it down, and you really, you will want to get to the end to see how this plays out. So as I set some time aside, you won't regret that you did. So, but Rae, a debut novel. So before we get into the novel itself, I'd love to know, why did you start writing crime fiction? What got you into that? Why didn't you go down another genre route? Why this, and when did it all start?
Okay. Well, I've always loved crime. I mean, my first novels that I was passionate about were Nancy Drew. I
Yeah.
loved those when I was young, and then Rebecca has a very special place in my heart, and then I kind of went down the Raymond Chandler route. So I've always I don't know, crime to me is a great way of exploring the human condition, and trying to understand why people do what they do, and it's such a great genre to do that in. So it's always captured my attention, and whether that be even in movies and TV shows, like recently The Mayor of Easttown, just like, oh, wow, that just blew me away. You know, the story and the interweaving, but the character studies and the so yeah, for me, I can't remember a time I didn't
Mhm.
love reading crime, and I've always been interested in understanding people. So for me, I did a degree in performing arts
Mhm.
when I was younger. So I was interested in telling the story through performance and TV shows and things like that. And then I left that behind and had a whole other career as a youth worker. And in that sense, I was dealing with people's lives
Mm.
in trauma and in different ways there. Um, and then as part of that, I went to Northern Ireland as an aid worker,
Mhm.
and worked there for a year. And then, I don't know, about 5 years ago, I decided, right, this story's been festering.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and I decided that I wanted to give it a go and put it down on paper. Um, and I did. And then it took me about 8 months to write the story
Mhm.
itself. And then I sent it to Mark Lamprell, who's a writer and a movie director, and he came back to me and said, "Well, you've nailed the story, but now you need to learn to write."
Ouch.
He's
Yeah.
very kind, but no, he said it's there, but you just
Yeah, yeah.
you dialogue and story are your thing.
Mhm.
Let's do the other things. So I did a year-long mentorship with Catherine Hayman,
Mhm.
which was uh, exciting and hard and challenging and amazing. It was like boot camp for writing. And we did 10,000 words at a time. And she kind of would give me feedback each 10,000 words, and I had to go away and do the next 10,000 and apply that knowledge. And yeah, I got to the end of the year and had a book. I still had to do a lot of editing and
Yeah.
stuff. I managed to get an agent then, which was incredible. And yeah.
Okay, what strikes me, and thank you for telling us, the journey of the good mother. But what strikes me is, and a bit like a good mother, and a bit like the character in the book, that tenacity. Okay, so this book festers away, and then you set off, and there are some difficult moments, but you don't give in. It could have been so easy, having been told, well, yeah, this is great, now you need to learn to write, or to set yourself out to go to boot camp, and how punishing that can be. And you could have thought, oh, do you know what, it was a nice idea, but no, no, you said this book has to come into being, and I really admire that tenacity. That's, yeah, yeah,
Thank you. I was
yeah.
also really lucky to have, so many writers are really passionate about paying it forward
Mm.
and kind of helping new writers along. And I think that really helped. Having that support, having someone of the caliber of Mark say to me, I love this story. One day I might even like try to make it in a movie, or, that kind of, but to
Yeah.
have that level of someone kind of put that confidence in me, and then to have Catherine put that confidence in me, and then to have an agent. I was lucky as well. I had huge support, but yeah, I did just keep on going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Beautiful,
Lucky.
beautiful. You mentioned that community of authors, and I just wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about what it feels like being part of the crime writing community of Australia.
Oh, it's an amazing community. They're just supportive and passionate about Australian crime and having each other's backs and supporting each other. And it's really special. And I feel really lucky. I feel a bit cheeky being part of it. I was
It's like,
snuck in the
yeah,
door.
is it okay for me to be here? I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah, but it's
yeah.
lovely. I
and
really
and
enjoy it.
again, that's really encouraging, and it seems to replicate around the world, you know. And no family is without its ups and downs, but the crime writing community, seems to be that place that says, hey, come on in,
Yeah.
hey, you're welcome, yeah, there's a seat,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a seat for you, this is great. And I think, that encouragement for people to develop their stories, to be able to talk to one another, and that sense of maybe healthy rivalry, or maybe not even rivalry, that people champion each other's successes and stuff like that. And it's really encouraging to know that all over the world this thing is going on. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah,
mm,
because it's, quite a small community in some ways,
mm,
writing and yeah, but it's wonderful. It's such a good community to be in. But you do
great.
also have to work hard.
Yeah, yes, this isn't just playing, this is working. I know there's a lot of good fun and a lot of play, but yeah, that time when, I think, when maybe, you go back to your own space and you close that door, and the lonesome times, that is the life of a writer, because of needing the space. So
And you've got to have bum glue.
yeah, I I think that's why I could never be a writer, because I can hardly sit still for 5 minutes. So, if I'm embarrassed to say, I think people who know me well, it's like, yeah, Jackie's level of concentration, it's really poor. but but
Okay.
anyway, to the good mother, right? And as always, where does a book start? How did this begin? You talked about it festering, over that time. I sometimes, been talking recently about the cooking analogy, and there it's been simmering away nicely on a low light at the back. But when did you first put those ingredients in the pot? By that I mean, where does where did this come from? I mean, you could have written about anything and anywhere. Why this?
Well, I get it came from a spark in my own life.
Hmm.
When I was working in Northern Ireland, um, I took kids from lower socioeconomic areas away on camps together from, and they were like kids of the paramilitaries, so the IRA and the UVF.
Yeah,
And while I was there, I fell in love,
as
and
you do, as you
as
do.
you
Yeah,
do, so
yeah,
romance.
yeah. Hmm.
And so I went over initially with Australian Volunteers Abroad,
Hmm.
and was only there for a few weeks, and that was when I fell in love. And then I got offered a job back in Belfast, so I came home to Australia, packed up, went back to Belfast to work. When I got back there, I discovered that the man I had been dating was a member of a paramilitary organisation.
Mm,
Of course, I broke up
yeah.
and got on with my life. But it kind of always stayed with me, that
Mm,
what if idea. And I think a lot of writers have that, like, what if,
mm,
question all the time. Um, and I wondered, like, I found out by accident. So he didn't tell me. It was one of those situations I found. I kept wondering, when would he have told me? And if I'd found out much later, what would the impact have been on my
mm,
life? Um, I wondered if the relationship had ever been real, you
mhm.
know,
Yeah.
and so that idea had always stayed with me. What if I hadn't found out when I did? Um, and then many years later, I became a mother, and I had the whole I would do anything to protect my
Mm.
children
Oh,
and that kind of mantra. And I guess the two ideas merged, and it was like, well, would I? How far would I go? And then the idea of the impact of something in your past coming back into your present. And
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So there's the origins of this story. If you could just give us a brief introduction, based on that. So, what is this story about? How do you set us off on this roller coaster of a read?
okay, well, it's about a divorced Australian soccer mum of three, Sarah Calhoun. And the story opens when her son tells her that he has been selected to represent Australia at an international soccer camp in Dublin in the Republic of Ireland. And she says, no way, I'm not allowing you to go. but her ex-husband steps in and insists they allow him to follow his dreams. So
Mhm.
Riley heads off, but his arrival through customs in Dublin triggers two men from Northern Ireland to enter Sarah's life. And one of them is an obsessive policeman determined to uncover secrets that he believes she's hidden since she worked as a aid worker in Belfast in 97. And the other is an IRA executioner who threatens the lives of her children unless she does exactly as he says.
I mean, your introduction is just like, yeah. So where do we go from here? I really, really love the premise that you created, and I think, and I'm not a mom, but I think that really doesn't matter, because I think the moral dilemma that you construct for the reader, that just shouts from the page, so what would you do? you know and I love the two levels of it. I mean, there's more levels in this, but I love the two levels of, this is a regular, family, and yet it's not
Suburban,
yeah,
everyday
exactly.
mum.
That whole question is, let's take away Sarah's past, just that thing of, our son wants to go away, across the world to a camp with nobody's like, I'm not sure about that. I mean, with no background of what's gone on before. That typical family discussion of, can I go, can't I go? Ask your mum, ask your dad. What's that? So that's why I love that you present us with situations that are just really everyday for many of us. But then playing is this backdrop of, this is just not ordinary at all. you know and
Yeah.
it's a fabulous combination. um did you have Sarah, was Sarah already there, to go onto the page and go through, that journey of the story, or did you find that as you went along she developed in a different way?
Yes, so in the age-old writerly thing, I am a pantser, which really surprised me.
Yeah,
I
it's great.
thought
I
I was
love
a
that.
plotter.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I'd be a plotter, but I'm not. Um, and I find that really exciting. So I knew who she was, I knew what her history was, and I just wanted to throw her into this situation and see where things went. And I would sit down to write and I would be typing away, and then I would get up to go and get a cup of coffee or something and say to my husband, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what she did today. Like, I can't believe she did that. And that was so much fun and exciting. And that kind of 8 months of writing that first draft and
Mhm,
going on that journey with her, I guess,
mhm,
was, yeah, so she formed along the way in a sense, but her values and the core of her stayed the same. But I had no idea what she'd do.
mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm.
and that's,
I think it's lovely because, you know, as we go through this book, we so often you bring us to the point of, how will she react? What will she do? How will she deal with this? And I think, again, you give us a very simple everyday thing of secrets. We all have secrets. I mean, there may be the fact that, I've bought another book, and I've not mentioned it, that kind of everyday secret. Or the fact that, in my past, these things happened. I was involved in this way, and when do we come to the point with others and with ourselves of making peace with a secret, making peace with the past?
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
you give us again these, if we turn the book as if it were a mirror, and you give us big things to think about.
That was part of what I wanted to do. I
Mm,
wanted people questioning. And I've had people come to me and just say to me, oh, I was just so angry with her for doing this, that, and the
mhm,
other. Why would she do that? And
mhm,
but that was part of what I wanted to do. And I wanted wanted people questioning, uh, was she trustworthy? Was her,
Mm.
like everybody in her life was questioning her, I
Yeah.
guess, in that sense. Because I
Y-
think,
yeah, and just, I mean, and just as you in your life in that past with that person that you fell in love with, thinking, okay, so I thought I knew you,
mm,
but evidently I didn't know you, or I didn't know all about you.
well, I thought
Um,
I was a great judge of character till then.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
totally pulled the carpet out from underneath me.
Yeah, yeah, and I was talking to Joe Spain a couple of programs ago, and that idea of, those people that we're closest to. I mean, those people that we give our hearts to, that we share our lives with. How well do we know them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm.
and yeah. So, tricky question. I hope it's not too tricky, but so so the backdrop of this, that story from the past, um, and a nation's history and where it's difficult. Did you feel uncomfortable, going back to that time, or did it just feel these things need to be talked about?
Look, I really feel like they needed to be talked about. Um, my experience was that you had the peace, that the ceasefire and the peace accord and everything, but the experience of the people there was stuff was still happening.
Mm,
And I think that that's become even this year more obvious
yeah.
with riots.
Mm,
And so for me, and also I that exploring that idea of, well, if you've got a whole generation of people who have their expertise is in kidnappings and bomb making and robberies and things like that, and then you turn around and say, right, well, we're done with that now. Where do those people go? What skills do they have? And they were kind of abandoned in many ways. And I kind of wanted to recognize that eventually those skills would be taken in by other organizations and other things. So I just, yeah, there's a lot of, I really thought it was important to
mm,
focus a bit on Northern Ireland. And it's a country a lot of people don't know a lot about.
mm.
Um, the bits and pieces from the news or from music or whatever. Certainly when I was growing up, the music and stuff. But I think that people are, as much as it was an exploration of a country, as people worldwide have the same needs,
Mm,
and it
mm.
doesn't matter whether you are one side or the other, or yeah, I our needs are security and shelter and clothing and family, and we'll do whatever to
Y-
protect us.
Yeah, I think it's, that famous quote from the MP that was sadly killed, Joe Cox, that we have more in common than the
Yes.
things that divide us. Um, and
And that was in my experience when I was there.
yeah, yeah, because as you say, in the youth camps that you did, presumably there were children who belonged to families on either side of that conflict.
But that was the whole goal of the camps. Like we were supported by the European Union. That was the
Mhm.
organisation I was working for, was set up by the European Union. And we were to take the kids from these and introduce them, because unless they had these camps, quite often they didn't meet anyone from the other side till they went off to uni
Mhm,
or work.
mhm.
Everything was segregated: schools, bus stops, taxis, everything. So to have that opportunity to come together on camps, and they'd come to the camp and they'd stand in opposite sides of the room, and it would be, my mum's told me I'm not allowed to talk to them, and I'm not allowed to talk to them. End of the week, best friends, arms around each other, but then they had to go home and pretend that they hadn't made friends.
Yeah,
So, and then we would get them together once a week on a Friday night for a bit, so they could come together for
yeah,
these things. The parents loved the break, but yeah, it was the idea of breaking down those
brilliant,
barriers.
brilliant, brilliant.
That
And
was,
and I think in this book as well, I think we have, not necessarily that situation, but for breaking down barriers, people's personal barriers. I think,
yeah.
Yeah, there's a great breakdown of that. Now, there's another character that I'd like for you. I know I'm sorry that we can't discuss all the characters, but I'd like to talk about Sarah's son, Riley.
Mm.
Yeah, and because from the point of view of, and again, not giving any spoilers, but from a point of view of, of a young man who is setting out on life and all that that might hold, who is he, and how does he develop? And again, you can't do spoilers because I can't do that
Oh,
because
I know. I'm
I
going
could,
to.
yeah, no, no, 'cause you want people to read this book. But
Mm.
talk about him and how you developed him through the story.
Look, I started him out as a typical 16-year-old boy passionate about soccer who has a fairly overprotective mum, who he loves, but he's in a house with three women, his two sisters and his mum. Um, and I think he wants to get away from that for a bit of a break. He still loves his dad, and because the Sarah and her husband
Yeah,
Matt are divorced, um, and they've got a pretty good relationship. But he just wants to be a soccer star. That's all he wants, and it's his dream. And then he goes over and has freedom and social life and gets a girlfriend, and the world opens up to him. Um, only it isn't always the way that you
mhm,
expect it to be.
yeah,
You
yeah.
go on an adventure and it can go all sorts of directions.
All sorts of directions. Yeah, and I think both for Sarah and for Riley, I found in it, the David and Goliath story.
Mm,
This individual at various points in their lives that have to stand up and be extremely brave. um like, I think that's the thing that struck me about both these characters in different ways, that that you created them with that core of, despite everything, no, I am not giving in, and i
mm.
will i will face what I have to face. um yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
do you
it's
do,
resilience. Like,
yeah, I was going to say, do you? I hope you never have to be in those situations that they found themselves in. But in yourself, do you recognize that essence of resilience?
yeah, yeah. I think on a number of levels, yeah, I do. Um, Both when I was in Northern Ireland, I think it was a quite a challenging. I went over there very naive, and I
Mm,
think that part of Riley is like I've put that into Riley's character, the naivety, and I went over thinking, oh, I can change the world, I guess, as an aid worker, and discovered very quickly I couldn't do that. Um, all I could offer was a picture of something different, which
mm,
was my life and how I'd grown up, and I talked a lot about that with the kids. Um, yeah, as far as resilience there, I just got on with it and dealt with situations that were way beyond what I had experienced in Australia. I mean, I didn't even know what the army looked like when I went there. Like in Australia, you don't see the army on the streets. You don't, nothing. I saw, men in machine guns and tanks and riots, and I had both sides telling me that I was siding with the other, and I got taken to picked up at my front door by four guys from one paramilitary organisation saying you've got to come to the head of the Belfast
wow.
brigade, because we think you're favouring the other side, and they wanted to present their stress. They put me in a car in the back seat between two of them and took me off to meet and tell me their side of the story, and I listened and said, no, I'm not favouring you. I just, this is, I view it differently to you. And then they dropped me home. And at the time I just got on with things. And then I got back to Australia and then I fell apart.
Yeah,
um,
outside that scenario, that context, because I didn't go through it, but I'm looking at it, from the distance of time, and I'm thinking, my God, you must have been absolutely petrified, but
Do you know
maybe
what's funny? At the time, I wasn't though. I just was getting on with it, and the next thing happened, and I dealt with the next kid, and I had to go to the hospital, and look after a child and their family who'd been kneecapped, and I had to. This was just one. I don't know. You just kind of rolled with it when I was there, and honestly, I was fine when I was there. It was when I got home. Like I still to this day, like, what 20 over 20 years later, cannot stand the sound of a helicopter.
wow.
Yeah, it really bothers me. If there's a
Yes.
hovering helicopter, I really don't like that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's funny, those kind of things that stay with you. But I don't know. I think resilience it's really, I value it in
Mhm.
life, and it's really important. And I want that in my stories and in my characters. I want them to find that in themselves.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm. Now, you also talk about, I love this because you set up a club, which is great, but you talk about the fact that you write crime with heart. Yeah.
yeah.
And again, I love the tension that's there with that, Um, I did this notion, did you have this idea before you wrote the book, or as you wrote the book, did this idea of this is the kind of crime fiction that I'm writing? And why did you want to set up a club? I mean,
Um, okay, so for me, I knew what interests me are ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, and how the impact on their lives. So on the ordinary. So you talked before about like very ordinary circumstances and ordinary decisions, but how other things can come in and totally turn everything on its head. Um, and for me, that's like the heart of the character. It's who they are and what matters to them more than anything in the world, and the impact of crime around that. So I guess the character side, the character driven side of stuff matters a lot to me. Um, Although I don't seem to be able to help not having a bit of action in there too.
yeah, I think we should say at this point, please don't anybody think that this is cozy crime, because it's
Yeah.
it's anything but cozy. I mean, this is a thriller,
Yeah.
um, wrapped in the shell, shall we say, of what again seems like life bubbling along, and it's you pull the wrapping off, and it just yeah, life doesn't bubble along at all.
No.
Um,
No.
yeah, and so I think this idea of crime with heart, um, because the other thing that I love as well is part of Sarah's character and makeup, and again, not wishing to give it away too much, but you know you allow us to see the emotional side, and by that I mean being attracted. Yeah, she might be
Mm.
divorced, but she's certainly she's not lost the mojo. It
No. No.
yeah, and I really appreciated that, because again, this wasn't a two-dimensional character, not at all. But I love the way you write it, so it's a bit where, you know, again, a character speaks, another character speaks, and she gets flutters, and it's like, yeah, because this happens in life, this,
Yeah, and as we get older, you still have that
yeah.
going on, and
Exactly,
that's
exactly. Yeah, she might be a mom of three, and and she's in really tricky situations, but there's still this very, very, you know, this, I don't know, this reaction that we can still have, and I love that fact that she wasn't, cut off from this kind of thing. It's good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, So if I can ask you, because I've been longing to know, but who is responsible for that amazing cover design?
So the design of the cover art is
Yeah.
actually a friend of mine who's a photographer, and he said to me, "Oh, do you want me to have a bit of a go at it?" And I was like, "Sure."
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about various ideas, and I talked about the idea of her being constantly watched, and feeling under surveillance,
Mm,
and the idea of a gun barrel and her running, and 'cause she's a runner and all of that stuff. And that's what he came up with, that eye, and it's just amazing.
mm,
Couldn't be
mm.
incredible.
It is. I mean, I think it's, again, just, I'll just put my cup down so that we can, I think, it is so impactful. It's
Mm.
like you say, is it an eye? Is it a gun barrel? Because you've got the things almost like the sights, the hairs, the
Yeah,
hairlines in there. Um, and it's like, and there's two runners, and
yeah.
which, yeah, yeah. Um, but against that, I mean, it's menacing. There's no doubt about it. But contrast that with the notion of the good mother, and what is, I mean, that a good mother is, it feels warm, it feels safe, so I loved that, the contrast that was there. I also think you set yourself a really difficult task in that, in bringing out the notion of what makes a good mother.
Mhm.
Because
Absolutely.
it is one of those, constant debates, and I think whether you are a mother trying to be a good mother, or whether from the other point of view of society can be so judgmental, you know, uh,
Absolutely.
around, what are women doing, or parenting as well. But in particular, I don't normally like to go along gender lines, but I think that, there is no doubt about it, the way that mothers are placed still on a pedestal to do
Oh,
the right thing and be the right thing. I have a friend whose her baby's nearly 6 months old now, but she's going through that thing of, am I doing this right?
and there is no right. Ultimately, and I think that's, yeah, I really wanted that concept in
Mm,
there of what is a good mother, and how do we judge someone as being a good mother. Like, it's been so interesting hearing the reactions from
mm.
people about that. Like I said before, people like furious with her, and but that's great because it means it's got them
Oh
thinking.
yeah, yeah. Reaction is great. I think that's the thing. Indifference with a novel, then it's like it didn't reach people, it didn't provoke a reaction, and whether that reaction is, yay, I love this, it was brilliant,
Mm.
or whether it was, what were you doing with this woman, why did you let her do this, then
Yeah.
that's good too, because it's touched something in readers. And speaking of, readers reactions, um has your book been on sale in Northern Ireland?
I've had a few people from Northern Ireland read it and
Yeah,
contact me, um, and that's been very. I was very nervous about it,
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
um, but they've liked it. So far, like, it's been, I think that balanced, and just bring light to stuff that they
Yeah, yeah.
feel, and I think the outside perspective
Mhm.
on it, maybe. Yeah, that's I've had a couple of emotional moments with reactions and messages
Yeah.
from people in Northern Ireland.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mm.
and some very nervous moments.
I can, yeah, I can imagine, because it's like, I'm writing, I'm writing part of a nation's history in a
Yeah,
way, whilst,
I didn't wanna be disrespectful,
yeah.
and I didn't, because I am an outsider.
Mm.
I did live there for a year, so it gives me some insight, but it's still, I haven't got the generational history there, and the generational trauma, and the so yeah, I,
But another thing that I think you did with that as well, and I knew you alluded to it when we started our conversation. You know, history is written in large general terms.
mm,
And in often in official terms.
yeah,
But what you give us in here, as part of that backstory, you give us the story of, a number of individuals, and I think, who lived in those times, and sadly who died as well in those times, and it's so that, that the individual story is not lost behind the official story, if we call
yeah.
it that.
it was really important to me that each and every character had, like, each of them are the hero of their own story.
Mhm,
So they each had motivations and drivers for their behaviors,
mhm.
however horrid some of them might have
Yeah,
been.
yeah,
Um, because I think that's when it gets interesting, is when someone is behaving as if they're the hero of their story. It's yeah.
yeah, yeah. I went away with an idea of, yeah, I see that family,
Mm.
and what it, you know, living in those times and experiencing that, and it not being the British government, and it not being the paramilitary organizations, but that it being, a family that could have lived next door to me, or could, and I think that's a different lens on history when it's
Yeah,
yeah, like that.
it comes back to the everyday person.
Yeah, exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Now, as much as it pains me to do this, I'm aware of the time, and I don't wish to move away from the good mother either. But when somebody has written a debut as powerful as this, okay, then there's always the difficulty of what happens next. So,
Yes.
is there? I mean, is there a part? 'Cause part two to this? Are you sending Sarah somewhere else, or have
No.
you? Or have, no, no. Okay, so have you closed the door now? This was a standalone, yeah.
Standalone. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it needs to be. And yeah, I don't want to be the Australian that writes always about Northern Ireland either. So,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
um,
Yeah. So what's next?
okay, well, I'm about halfway through. It's been a bit slower this time, but the next one's called The Empty Chair,
Mm.
and it opens with a woman ringing her sister from the boot of a car. And
As you do.
just
Yep.
going to dive right in there again.
Yeah.
Um, I read an article about the impact of a missing person on families, and I've done a lot of research and stuff on that, and I kind of wanted to explore that idea of the impact on a family unit when someone goes
Mhm,
missing.
mhm.
So that's the next one, but it's obviously a
It's
thriller again.
mhm. Great, 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 great. And based in Australia, yeah? Based
Yeah,
fully in
based in
Australia?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, based fully in Australia. It moves somewhat into the outback for a bit of it and stuff. So yeah.
Great, great. I mean, even before reading any of it, um, I know it's going to be thrilling. I know that, and I wish you all the best with that writing, because that second book, as they always say, the first book's come out of because it's been there for so long and it needs to come out, and then the second book is starting from that point of, okay, what next? And you haven't got the luxury of 5 years and some for this to take shape. Yeah.
No, and also with your first one, you don't know what you don't know. Do
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like, you're just
Yeah.
kind of writing it
Yeah.
and moving along with it. Whereas this time now, I don't know, you've got the critic in your brain going, "Oh, that's not right." So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting process, the second one. But I'm lucky to be surrounded by a lot of very encouraging, supportive writers who are kicking me along.
Great, good, in the nicest possible way, because
Yes,
yeah, it's done with love. Of
it
that I
is
have,
absolute love,
of,
absolute love.
of that I have no doubt. But as we close, again, I want to really recommend this book to people, uh, because that idea of being taken elsewhere in time and space, and also going along that journey, a mother's journey, uh, and an unusual journey, and hang on to your hats while you do it. Rae Cairns, it has been an absolute delight to be able to have this conversation. And I don't think, if it hadn't been for COVID, I wonder would we have been able to do this. So,
I know. Thank you
yeah.
so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy.
Likewise, and I really look forward to the day when I can welcome you to Newcastle for Newcastle Noir, and by then we can be probably talking about your next book.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the very best, Rain. See you soon. Yeah.
Same Jackie. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.